Hello, good evening, and welcome. As David Frost used to say, I'm going to talk about Samuel Reshevsky. Reshevsky was an American Grandmaster born in 1911, and as such, he was almost exactly a contemporary of Botvinnik's, and he became rival to Botvinnik. His parents moved him, and they moved in about 1920 to the US. They were originally from Poland. Reshevsky himself, very like the infant Mozart, was just about from pillar to post in Europe, giving simultaneous displays. And he didn't actually go to a school, a formal school, until he was 12. And in his book, and I'm going to be showing you several books by him and featuring Samuel Reshevsky, he talks pretty candidly about, in a very direct style, about his life. Now, the first book I'm going to show you is this. Now, all books by Reshevsky suffer from one problem, which is forgivable, particularly given the time that they were written, and that is they're probably ghostwritten. But I really don't want that to cloud your judgment, because they are all very interesting, and we don't know what bits and bobs he did and what bits and bobs probably Fred Reinfeldt did. This has an introduction by Kenneth Harkness. Reshevsky not only knows how to win his own chess games, he can explain to others how he does it. Thank you very much. Well, every move Reshevsky made had to count. If you had one slip, the challenger might be able to avoid perpetual check and queen another pawn. From some hidden reservoir, Reshevsky summoned up his strength, prepared to do battle for the half point and avoid the loss of the game. Throughout his life, Reshevsky was a very, very determined player at the board. And I suppose it has to be said that he probably had hatred for a number of players, and the Russians en bloc, possibly, Fischer probably, and others as well. This book, it says, finally, this book is not ghostwritten. It is necessary to say this because many books on chess and on other subjects of matter have capitalized on the names of prominent people who have little or nothing to do with writing the books. It has been my privilege to assist Mr. Reshevsky in the production of this volume, arranging the games into chapters, checking the descriptive notation, typing the manuscript, etc. But Mr. Reshevsky is the original and only author of this book. And that was written in 1962. And it cross-references, because this was published by Pitman, Isaac Pitman, Reshevsky's games, starting in 1951. There was a match between the USA and the USSR, as it then was, and Reshevsky played on top board and beat Botvinnik, who was then the world champion, I think 2.5, 1.5, which was an amazing result. I mean, I know it's only 4 games, but nevertheless, that is an amazing result. So let's start at the beginning. Here we have, I really love this cover. Look at that. Pitman, who published books which weren't necessarily about shorthand. Come on, I've just thought of something as well. Come on. And there's a picture of Reshevsky in here. As a little boy. As I say, he would play against several greybeards, 20, 30 games simultaneously, and to wipe the board with, if not all of them. And he was a quite amazing player, but I think as he grew older, he did get pretty embittered. Possibly he would have liked to have grown up in Central Europe, but didn't. Now there he is at the table in a sailor suit. And as you can see, he's playing against various elders, none of whom I suppose are Capablanca or Frank Marshall. But he did early on play some very strong players indeed. This is him at 9 age 9 in 1920. And he's playing the West Point team. There is a bit of controversy surrounding whether, in fact, Reshevsky's parents changed his date of birth. I don't need to go into that, and I don't know anything about it other than the fact that the suggestion has been made. Another weakness in Reshevsky's game was that he wasn't very good at openings. I think he could have become as good as he needed to be. And it wasn't his strong point. It definitely wasn't. Had he been able to work more systematically, maybe with other masters, as could be easily done today, and had all the books existed, as they didn't then, he could have perhaps become slightly more learned, but something of the natural style would have fallen away. Of course it would. It's bound to. He used to play dragons with a6, and also the white side of the Nimzo Indian. He would play it the knight, the king knight from g1 to e2, and this became his trademark. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong at all. So let's look through and see what we find. Here he is playing in the Avro tournament of 1938. Avro were an amazing sponsor. And also gave their name to some aircraft. I actually went to a talk about Dutch aircraft, almost against my will, not quite. And of course saw the name Avro and called out. Well, hey. It was a mixed tournament. One occasionally encounters a comparatively weak player. The Avro, however, there were no weak spots. You're telling me there weren't. Every player was the World Championship caliber. What happened was that Alekhine, who had been very ill, died in Portugal, lost to reality, shall we say, in 1946. And FIDE, the world governing body, quite correctly took up the cudgels and put together a list of 6 players who were to play off to decide who the new world champion would be. Of course, you need a world champion. And Reuben Fine of the USA declined to play, and Reshevsky, who was already picked, went ahead and was the leading challenger from, well, you could say the West. In fact, perhaps you should say the Wild West. And I know that the Russians were pretty insistent and actually got hold of people and took them into the office and said, why didn't you beat Reshevsky? Or why were you I think there's even something with Botvinnik or Keres, I forget which, when he was asked, why did you shake hands with him? And came the reply, one always does that before a game of chess. Now, here are games played in the New York State Championship of 1941. So that gives you an indication. Reshevsky went away to school, and he also trained to be an accountant, as did Najdorf, who's a bit more of an extrovert. Najdorf perhaps should have been given Reuben Fine's place in the World Championship tournament of 1948, but wasn't. I don't suppose, at the time it might have upset him a bit, but I don't suppose really it made much difference, and I'm 99% certain he wouldn't have won it. So no disrespect to him or his memory. All these guys are, of course, now dead. Here we are. As frequently remarked elsewhere in this book, it's a difficult task to make a living from chess. Retirement and comeback. So he went away and came back again. The intervention of the war cannot have helped his equilibrium any more than it did with anybody else. By 1946, Capablanca, Lasker, and Alekhine were all no longer with us. And the young Reshevsky was one of the challengers for the title, which was kept until the reign of Bobby Fischer, exclusively by the Russians. So that's the first of the books, his early games. This is a very interesting book and very little known, really. Certainly this side of the Atlantic. The Boy Fish I Knew and Other Stories. Arnold Denker, who was a veteran Grandmaster and rival to Reshevsky, and Larry Parr. Not to be confused with David Parr or Frank Parr. He's not one of their relations. Very interesting book. Loads and loads of unannotated games in English descriptive notation, which may surprise you. But obviously at the moment, I looked in the index for references to Reshevsky and found, I'm not joking, about 25. So I'm not about to read them all out. But nevertheless, if you see this book, and Arnold Denker was played on top board for the USA when they played the USSR in 1946. And he won a tournament held in Hollywood, of all places. He won the US closed, Denker, but he wasn't as strong as Reshevsky, nothing like. Over the years, my wife Nina and I grew increasingly fond of Sammy and his wife Norma. We respected Sammy's strong religious feelings. When I met Bronstein, I met him a couple of times. He told me that Reshevsky deliberately said, "Oh, could my games be?" I can't do the accent. Could my games be rescheduled? Because of his religious observance. The same was true of Bobby. We respected Sammy's strong religious feelings, and on many a Saturday, when he was not allowed to use mechanical transport, I walked with him from Manhattan Chess Club down to his apartment on 12th and Madison. My wife and I often went to dinner with him, observed how he cross-examined restaurant owners as chefs to assure himself that the food would be strictly kosher. During the tournament, he was often travelled great distances in order to observe the Jewish Sabbath. Well, there you are. Games here against Denker, as I explained, training game, and one against Smyslov from the Leningrad-Moscow match. I don't understand. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. Maybe it was a match that changed venues, not actually teams. Playing a game with Reshevsky was like trying to shake off a pit bull that clamped its teeth onto the leg of your trousers. That's a sentence that doesn't hang comfortably. Well, looking through, I was hoping for a little photograph of the great man. There probably is one here. Bobby Fischer playing Larry Evans, which we don't need, but it's interesting to have it. And there's Lauren Bacall and Bogey. So all of you know about actors, film actors, long ago and not so long ago. Humphrey Bogart was the strongest chess-playing actor ever. Now, this is an interesting book. It went to a second edition in the US, but not here in England. Anthony Saidy, I think I'm right in saying, I'd hate to be wrong, he's still alive. He's about the only player of that generation who's still with us. Bless him, says he patronizingly, but I do mean it. Let's see what it says. 52 to 60. In this position, said Reshevsky, I had to survive. The strongest tournaments of our time, special provision has been made for scheduling of a certain participant in order to avoid the Jewish Sabbath. Although perhaps half of all the greatest chess players of history have been Jews, there's an interesting point, which I really would like to emphasize, have been Jews. This strict stipulation applied only to one man, Samuel Reshevsky, heir to the ancient tradition. Reshevsky was born in Poland in 1911. Soon after learning the game at 4, He was recognized as a boy of wonder and attracted the attention of famous masters. He was taken to Lodz and on to Warsaw, where the German governor of occupied Poland requested a game against the Wunderkind. After defeating the powerful opponent of his life, the 6-year-old bloke broke the silence. You play war. I play chess. I wonder. And it gives some games, playing against Emanuel Lasker, who better you flex your muscles against them, great Lasker. And then playing Averbach, and then playing Donner. And then playing Reshevsky. With his lack of preparation and failure to unlearn the habits of time pressure. Yes, he wasn't good at handling his clock. To unlearn the habits of time pressure via methods well known to Soviet trainers, Reshevsky in effect gave odds to his competitors for world supremacy, providing an impressive example of the capacity of the lone individual in the struggle of life. Yes, to a lesser extent, this could be said of perhaps other Europeans, such as Mecking. Sorry, he wasn't European. Portish and Larsen, who were in their time out and away much stronger than all of their other compatriots at home. It was in 1957 the world was amazed to see Reshevsky toppled from primacy in American chess by the 14-year-old, altogether now, Bobby Fischer. In latter years, the Grandmaster draw has made its appearance in his play. This is now preferred to continue exhausting adventures on the precipice with his danger of clock hands. It is now rare to see him win a tournament or lose a game. At the age of 57 in 1968, he made his last hurrah for the world honours, reaching the quarter-final stage of the championship matches, in other words, the candidates. Reshevsky, the great fighter of unerring instinct, will never grow old, only mellow. In point of fact, he died at Rockland County, Suffern, in 1992. One last book by Reshevsky. There we are. Not an easy book to find. Not an easy book to find. Great chess upsets. Now, if you look through this, you might think, ooh. It's famous players losing to much weaker ones, but it's not. It's famous players just losing. Nicely laid out in descriptive notation, which not everyone likes, but no might criticize. It has games by Smyslov playing against Botvinnik and Petrosian playing against Spassky and Tal playing against Botvinnik. In other words, it's a who's who of world chess. There we are. The book is published by Faber. Faber and Faber, I suppose it is. Yes. There's a chapter on Bobby. Robert Fischer. Chapter on Bent Larsen, one on Korchnoi, one on Spassky, one on Tal, one on Keres, and one on himself. I was born on November the 26th, 1911, near Lodz, the sixth child of a family of Orthodox Jews. I was attracted to chess at the age of 4 and was watching my father play with friends. I played in the US teams at Chess Olympiads of 1937, 1950. Obviously, there was a gap because of the Second World War. 1952, 58, 64, 68, and 74. I seemed to produce my best play in matches. My match record is one of the best in chess history. I know that after the Fischer-Spassky match of 1972, he went on television to say, I'm a better player than Bobby Fischer. He wasn't, but nevertheless, that's what his claim was. And you have to respect the old boy, I'm sure. This has been Chess Book Reviews 130. I'm James Pratt. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.